Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this latest video from the Warrior Sword. We are so glad that you have tuned in today. I'm kind of doing this and praying that things are going to work out as we are having the technical difficulties again. My intention was to watch part one and refresh my mind, but our internet is out right now, and so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to post this as I'm recording it. But we're just going to trust the Lord to take care of that, and that He will give us the words to say. As we look at part two in this message that we started last week, give me a reason. Give me a reason. And we started out with John the Baptist in prison. John the Baptist, the one that knew that Jesus was the one, but yet in the prison, he is saying, I just wonder if you really are the one. And sometimes facing the circumstances around us, we may ask God to give us a reason. Why is it that we are doing what we are doing? And does it make any difference that we are doing that? And we're going to try to pick up with part two of that and just trust that maybe our internet will come back up here and we will be able to post the message for you to see it. And again, I say jokingly, if it doesn't work, then you will never hear what I just said. So if you are hearing what I just said, you will know that it came back up and we were able to do that. We're going to use the verse out of Isaiah chapter 49, verse 11 for this part two of Give Me a Reason. God is speaking. And he says, and I will make all my mountains a way, and my highway shall be exalted. As we look at what God is doing around us, and God makes this tremendous promise, I'm not going to remove the mountain out of your way, but I'm going to turn that mountain into a highway. The thing that the enemy tries to throw against you in the work that you are doing for me, the Lord says, I'm going to turn that into a highway for you, and my highways will be exalted. I will lift those places up and give you the answers that you need. One of the things that has been a realization in my own life, and I think back to many years ago when my ministry was just taking off, and I thought that there was nothing that could stop it. But what I had planned was not what God had planned. And because of that situation, when you come face to face with God's plan and he shows you, well, that's not exactly what I intended for you, what you thought that I wanted to do was not what I intended for you, it's really hard to come to that place. I talked last week about my friend's phone call and what inspired these messages to me to use them in this time. And we were talking about the fact he's just an excellent, excellent musician. And then all of a sudden, all of that changes, not his ability to play music, but all of the things that he was doing musically changes. And it was the same way with me and my ministry, that those things change. And what is it that God is doing? And at least in my part, I begin to think, God, maybe you shouldn't have chose me in the first place. And then just this past week, as I was working on this second part of the message, I came across a devotional by Oswald Chambers. And you've heard me quote Oswald Chambers numerous times. And I want to read that whole devotional. Just stick with me. The bravery of God in trusting us. You say, but he has been unwise to choose me because there is nothing in me. I am not of any value. That is why he chose you. As long as you think there is something in you that God, then God cannot choose you because you have ends of your own to serve. But if you have let him bring you to the end of your self-sufficiency, then he can choose you to go with him to Jerusalem, and he will mean the fulfillment of purposes which he does not discuss with you, Let me take a moment there, and just before I read the rest of that, he doesn't discuss it with you. He doesn't discuss it with me. This is his plan and what he chooses to do with us. And folks, I have said so much, especially over the last year. I have said so much and just said to God, why did you choose me? You had to be wrong. You know who I am and you know my flaws. Why in the world would you choose me? And Chambers says that's exactly why he chooses you, because he knows who you are. Now let's go on with the writing of Oswald Chambers. We are apt to say that because a man has natural ability, therefore he will make a good Christian. It is not a question of our equipment, but of our poverty, not of what we bring with us, but of what God puts into us. Not a question of natural virtues, of strength of character, knowledge, and experience. All that is of no avail in this matter. That is not of any avail in this matter that we are talking about. The only thing that avails is that we are taken up into the big compelling of God and made his comrades. 1 Corinthians, I think that's 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 to 30. The comradeship of God is made up out of men who know their poverty. He can do nothing with the man who thinks that he is of use to God. As Christians, we are not out for our own cause at all. We are out for the cause of God, which can never be our cause. Do you get that? The cause of God can never be our cause. It is God's agenda and not our agenda. God, give me a reason because I need a reason. But God is saying, my plan will never, your plan will never fit up to my plan. Because we can't dream big enough and think big enough for what God is able to accomplish. We do not know what God is after. But we have to maintain our relationship with him, whatever happens. We must never allow anything to injure our relationship with God. If it does get injured, we must take time and get it put right. The main thing about Christianity is not the work we do, but the relationship we maintain and the atmosphere produced by that relationship. That is all God asks us to look after, and it is the one thing that is being continually assailed. The devil is continually assailing our relationship, doing everything to try to break us away from that relationship. And that's why we come to the place of saying, God, what is the reason that I'm doing this? God doesn't tell us the reason that we are doing this. We need to just trust him and walk behind him, even if we can't understand what it is that he's doing or where it is he is walking. He said to Abraham, I'm not going to tell you where you're going. You just go where I tell you. Well, see, that goes against the grain with people like me. Because I want to know the reason. I want to know the purpose. I want to know why it is that I'm doing what I'm doing. And when I can't understand that and I can't figure that out, then I become a person that becomes a despairing minister because I'm trying to figure out my reason. God says you'll never fit up. You never will fit up. You never will be good enough. You never will have everything in order. You never will be able to look at yourself and say, wow, look at me, I have arrived. Because you will never arrive. It is him and his righteousness. And so you see, we become flawed when we begin to look at things and say, well, I need to understand why it is that this is going on. We need to see a fresh and renewed revelation of our Savior so that we understand who he is and why we are following him. Reverend Carter Conlon brought out the reality of when he was talking about giving a reason, he brought out the reality of the recognition of what is happening to sinners. Why should I keep doing what I'm doing? And then you begin to understand the lostness the people that go to hell. He brought out the reality of the rich man and Lazarus. If you remember that story, the rich man had everything given to him, and Lazarus begged for a crumb under the table of the rich man. And then they die, and the rich man goes to torment, and Lazarus goes to the bosom of Abraham. And the rich man looking up from his torment, and there's a whole conversation, and I'm not going to take the time to talk about that, but there's a whole conversation with that. But what it comes to is, finally the rich man calls out to Abraham and says, send someone to my brothers so that they can hear the truth, because I don't want them to end up in this torment. How many people today are in torment, crying out to God, saying, please send someone? Now Abraham says, even if someone from the dead would come back, they would not hear. And I fear we are in that condition today, that we see people that just will not listen. And I have found myself, even in this past week, being so frustrated with people that I've dealt with and tried to help them in every way that I could, and they just determine they're going to rebel. And they don't understand what is their reality that is ahead of them is an eternity without God. And when you see that and you recognize that this is your family members and your friend, and yes, even church members that have no relationship with God. There's lots of people sitting in the church pews every Sunday that have no relationship with God. And their end is eternal damnation. Why should I do this? God, give me a reason. If we could come to understand the terrible things, and I think of that again, even in our nation, in this day and time, what we are watching happen in our nation is the complete unraveling of our nation. Our nation is falling apart, and many of us older ones have grown up in an America that we know was quite different than the America of today, and we recognize what is going on, and if the good Lord doesn't intervene, we are headed to destruction and judgment, and we're praying for him to intervene, and I hope that you are praying for him to intervene. But when you begin to think, what is going to happen to all the people around us? They are lost. Somebody has to preach the word. Somebody has to speak the truth. I've lived my entire ministry, and I've watched God, and I've said that numerous times, I've watched God do just some really amazing things, and I love him for that. And I've lived my entire ministry with the attitude that God's word will not return void to him. So that means that if I put the word out there, God will reap what he sees fit to reap. So what is the reason for it? So often, again, we fall back on our own agenda, and then when our agenda doesn't work, we fall into the despair and say, well, God shouldn't have ever called me in the first place because I don't fit up. I'm not good enough. God brought back to my memory over the last couple of weeks some of the most exciting things that I have got to do in ministry, and they wouldn't be what most people would think. Most people would think the big crusades that I might have preached at, or the radio or TV, where hundreds and hundreds of people were listening on a daily or a weekly basis, or putting out the magazines and the newsletters and all of those things, and having hundreds of people read what I had to write, or writing the novel or the nonfiction book and having people read that, and you think, wow, you've had some really impressive things happen, but that isn't what tickles me about ministry. I remember a man that was on his deathbed. It was death couch. Walter would get a kick out of that for me saying that. It was his death couch. And I was living in Indiana, some 3.5 hours away. And he wanted to hear me sing a couple of songs that I did. So I loaded my guitar into the car and I drove all that distance. Halfway there, I ran into a lady that was stranded at a truck stop just outside of Indianapolis. And I picked her up and took her to where she needed to go, and then got back on the road again, so I was late getting there. And we sat on his couch and we sang together, and I played the guitar and I watched a smile on his face. And then I turned around and headed home. You see, don't take this wrong. I never got paid a penny for that, nor did I want a penny for that. None of that made any difference. It was one of the most special things that I ever got to do. I remember the times of going and talking to people that were so deep in despair and depression and discouragement, and it was one-on-one, just one-on-one, no big crusade, no fanfare, no pay, no whatever, just them and me, sometimes alone, maybe in a dark park, or maybe in their house, or maybe in a restaurant, and watching God do things, having the opportunities to counsel people whose marriages are still together today, having the opportunity to talk to young ladies that had been terribly abused, and watching them come to victory. Mike, are you bragging on your ministry? Well, if you don't know me very well, you could take it that way. But the truth is that that's the things that I treasure and value. I didn't intend to do this, so I got to reach up there. Just recently, we had a little boy and a little girl visiting our church. Now, I did not lead them to Christ, but I don't know if you can even see this or not. I did not lead them to Christ, but they would come up to me every Sunday and say, "Good speech, good speech." They're just little. The little boy drew me this picture and said, "That will be the last picture that I get to draw for you until next summer." And their grandma came in and shared that they had accepted Jesus Christ as their Savior while they were sitting talking to her. Why should we do what we are doing? I hope that you don't get mad at me, young lady, but just a couple of weeks ago, I've been working with a young lady, and she sent to me in a message and said, I turned my life over to Christ. I wanted to jump up and down. I wanted to just praise God from the top of my lungs. I watch him do, and I've told you before, I don't like the circumstances that I am in right now. If it was my choice, if it was my goal, if it was my direction, I would be in a different place. We had another lady that just recently accepted Christ, and she's so on fire. She's just such a blessing to me. And I praise God for what he is doing. I'm watching God do things in the midst of my dislike of what I am doing. And I'm watching him do things. And sometimes I'm like, God, why did you even call me? You know who I am. Give me a reason to keep going. Give me a reason to keep trying. I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing anymore. Lord, I feel like that I'm sitting in a prison, and I'm just wondering, are you really the one? And I can hear God saying that. Now, I'm not getting the blessing of seeing the physical healing in people, although he has done that. Praise his name. I have seen him do that. Praise his name. But he's just doing some just spectacular things. And he says, Mike, you must decrease so that I can increase. You must decrease. And the devil's fighting with everything inside of him. And sometimes I admit to you, I listen to the devil, and it gets me into despair and discouragement and depression. And God reaches down and he says, I'm going to use you. I'm going to use you. Sometimes I walk up onto the pulpit or I get behind this camera and I'm thinking, God, I don't want to do this. Why do this? Nobody cares. Nobody's paying any attention. We just sent out the first newsletter that we had sent out in years. And I thought, this is a waste of time. And then the response was immediate. And I thought, wow, Lord, what are you doing? He doesn't give us an explanation. He just says, trust me and follow me, even if I won't tell you where you're going. Even if I won't tell you what I'm up to. You do what I tell you. And you preach the word. And you preach the word in this lost and dying world. And I got some news this past week that just really frustrated me. And again, it was just about a spiritual situation. And it really frustrated me. And this morning, as I was driving to go to a prayer breakfast, the Lord whispered in my ear. I was listening to How Great Thou Art on the CD player. And the Lord whispered into my ear, I've got this. You just let me deal with it. See, God doesn't need Mike Merle to be a fixer. God needs Mike Merle to be a disciple and to just simply obey his command. His word will not return void. And what we sow, we will reap. And yes, some of it falls on stony ground and some of it falls on the ground and thorns grow up and destroys it. That isn't what we are concerned about. We preach the word and we preach the truth, and the truth that we are preaching, we should be able to preach wherever we are. Whether it is free or in prison, whether it is in America or in China, we should be able to preach it. And if we start changing the word to try to make it more palatable to the world, then what we are preaching is no longer the gospel, and it is a waste of time, and it's not worth listening to. And unfortunately, we are seeing that a lot in the churches across America today, where the messages are becoming more and more empty from the gospel truth. So give me a reason. God, give me a reason why I should do this. I should never worry about the results. I should worry about my obedience. My obedience is of great value to God, and so is yours. And yes, he may not open the door. You may never be a Billy Graham. You may never preach to a big crusade. You may never be anything where people are calling off your name or anything like that. And recognize that that doesn't make a bit of difference. It doesn't matter in this, Oswald Chambers said. It is of no value. It avails nothing. But God will take you and place you at a well side with a lady living in despair and say to you, now speak hope to her. He'll take a woman who has daughters, who is demon oppressed and possessed. And Jesus was even mean to her, I think. It is not right to cast the children's bread in front of dogs. Lord, you just called that woman a dog. Read it. But before the story is over with, the woman's daughter is healed. He may lead you to a little girl laying in a bed where everybody is weeping over her because she has died. And Jesus says, why are you weeping? She's not dead, she's just sleeping. He may lead you to a graveside where a man has laid dead for 4 days. Say, Lazarus, come forth. Mike, what are you saying? I'm saying to you that if you will be willing, you won't have to worry about the reason that you are doing it. You just will be doing it because God will accomplish whatever reason he wants to accomplish. And when we lay our heads down at nighttime, we can rest in that. Let me promise you something. You have a reason to be doing God's work. Our nation is a mess. Our families are a mess. Our churches are a mess. And God needs somebody unafraid to stand up and speak the word and preach the word. It was said to D.L. Moody, it is yet to be seen what God can do with a man that is totally committed and sold out to him. And D.L. Moody said, by the grace of God, I will be that man. I'm renewing and refreshing my prayers in the midst of my struggle to say, God, I want to be sold out to you, so that the reason is clear. It is not anything that I will gain or see or understand or figure out or will mean something to me. The reason is just being obedient and walking along with you. And Lord, whatever it is that you want me to do, I am but clay in the hands of my potter. Use me as you see fit. Don't worry about the reason anymore, folks. The reason is there. There's people lost. They need to hear the word. And let's be about our Father's business and be preaching it. God bless you. I hope this part 2 has ministered to you today. And I hope that you will continue to tune into the videos. Thank you for listening.